For centuries, Native American tribes endured winter temperatures that dropped far below freezing, with nothing but a teepee standing between them and certain death. While modern travelers would freeze in a single night, entire families not only survived but thrived inside these seemingly fragile structures made of hide and poles. The secret wasn't luck or superhuman endurance, it was ingenious design, ancient knowledge, and survival techniques that modern people can barely comprehend. Here's what life was really like inside a teepee during the deadly winters of the Great Plains. Before we start, if these stories help you sleep, hitting subscribe would be cool. And I'm curious, where are you listening from and what time is it? Drop it in the comments. Someone from Finland commented last time, and I had to Google what time zone that even is. Okay, let's head back to the Great Plains in winter. But first, get comfortable. Seriously, fix those pillows. Pull up that blanket. Because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. Your eyes snap open to darkness and bitter cold. That first conscious breath feels like swallowing ice. Your lungs seize, then relax. Above you, a circle of stars shines through an opening in the darkness. The night is perfectly clear, which means it's perfectly, brutally cold. The hide walls of your teepee are stiff with frost. They make soft cracking sounds as they flex in the wind. It's maybe 30 below zero outside. The night air is so cold it could freeze the moisture in your lungs if you breathed it directly, but you're alive. You're warm enough. That thin wall of buffalo hide somehow keeps death at bay. A soft glow catches your attention. The embers of last night's fire are still alive, buried under a careful blanket of ash in the center pit. They've been silently breathing all night, waiting. Your father makes a small sound, more a grunt than a word, as he slides from beneath the buffalo robes. The movement lets in a knife edge of cold air that makes you pull the furs tighter. "Damn, it's cold," he whispers. Not like your warm bed right now, is it? Your heated home with insulated walls and central heating? No, this is survival at its most elemental, where every morning is a victory over the night. You watch as your father carefully uncovers the hidden embers. They glow orange-red in the darkness, like tiny stars fallen to earth. He feeds them, first his breath, gentle and measured, then small twigs arranged in a careful pattern. Within moments, flames lick upward, painting the inside of the teepee with moving light and, more importantly, the first waves of precious heat. Your mother stirs now, and your two sisters. Everyone knows the routine. No one rushes to leave their robes. You wait for the fire to build, for that first wave of warmth to push back the night's deep chill. "Looks like snow coming," your mother says, glancing up at the smoke hole. "Wind's shifted." The fire's growing now, flames reaching up toward that circular opening where wood smoke spirals out into the infinite blackness. It's not random, that hole, and it's definitely not a design flaw that lets the cold in. No, it's precisely engineered. The Plains tribes didn't just build shelters, they built survival machines. I know what you're thinking. No way a tent could keep you alive at 30 below. But here's the thing. These weren't just any tents. The teepee was arguably one of the most sophisticated portable dwellings ever designed. Let me paint you a picture of what you're living in. The teepee is a cone, about 15 feet high and maybe 15 feet across at the base. The frame consists of 13 lodge poles, usually cut from pine trees that grew tall and straight. Getting these poles was a huge deal. Some tribes travelled hundreds of miles to find the right trees. The poles were sometimes harder to find than the buffalo, my history professor once told me. Think about it, the Great Plains didn't exactly have forests. Some tribes would trade a horse for just 5 good poles. That's how valuable they were. Those poles, they're not just stuck in the ground randomly, they're positioned precisely, first with 3 main poles tied together at the top to create the foundation, then the rest are laid against this framework in a pattern handed down through generations. The result? A structure that's remarkably wind-resistant. The cone shape doesn't fight the wind, it guides it. While square structures catch the full force of a gale, the teepee lets the wind slide around its walls. You can hear it now, that howling prairie wind. It sounds angry, frustrated that it can't get at you, but inside, apart from the walls gently trembling, you're remarkably sheltered. In the winter of 1837, white trappers froze to death in their cabins, while native families survived in tepees. Right nearby, your grandfather told you once. White men thought our homes were primitive. They didn't understand what they were seeing. Your little sister Nima, she's about 4, crawls over to you, dragging her small buffalo robe. Her hair is sticking up in all directions, and she tucks herself against your side like a small animal seeking warmth. Cold, she says simply. Not for long, you tell her, nodding toward the fire that's now burning steadily. The inside of the teepee is beginning to transform as the darkness retreats. You can see the careful arrangement of your family's possessions around the edges. Buffalo hide parfleches containing dried meat and pemmican, bags of medicinal herbs, tools for scraping hides. Your father's bow and quiver of arrows. Everything has a place. Nothing is random in here. Every object, every arrangement has been refined by centuries of people surviving the harshest conditions imaginable. Your mother is up now, adding larger sticks to the fire. It's built in a small pit dug into the earth, lined with stones that radiate heat. The smoke rises straight up through the hole at the top, drawn by the physics of air movement. It's a perfect natural chimney. "What do you see up there?" you ask Nima, pointing to the smoke hole. She squints up at the fading stars. "Morning star," she says, pointing to a bright planet visible in the pre-dawn sky. Time to rise. You slide out from the robes, the cold air shocking against your skin after the cocoon of warmth. The ground beneath your feet is not frozen, though. That's deliberate. Beneath you is a layer of insulation, grass and reeds covered with buffalo hides. It separates you from the frozen earth that would otherwise pull the heat from your body like a thief. Hold up. Let's talk about how ingenious this is for a second. Modern campers know this principle well. They use foam sleeping pads for the same reason. Heat loss to the ground will kill you faster than cold air. The Plains tribes figured this out thousands of years ago. When the first white trappers came through, they'd sleep right on the frozen ground, your father told you once, laughing. Then they'd wonder why they were freezing to death with 3 blankets on top of them. Outside, the first grey light of dawn is seeping into the world. Inside, the teepee is coming alive. Your older sister is helping your mother prepare a morning meal, dried buffalo meat and some preserved berries. There's a pot of water heating by the fire, melted from ice. Your father chopped from the nearby creek yesterday. The teepee isn't just surviving the cold, it's creating a microclimate within. The temperature difference between inside and outside might be 50 or 60 degrees, all without insulation as modern people understand it. No fiberglass, no foam, just buffalo hide, wooden poles and the clever manipulation of airflow. "Can I open the door flap?" you ask, moving toward the east-facing entrance. Your mother nods. "Just for a moment, we need to see the weather." The door flap is another piece of ingenious design. It's not just an opening, it's a carefully crafted entrance that minimizes heat loss while allowing access. In the summer, it would be left open or tied back. Now, in the depth of winter, it's secured tightly, opened only when necessary. You pull it back just enough to peer outside. The world is transformed, covered in a blanket of snow that stretches to the horizon. The sky is the pale blue of deep winter, and your breath forms clouds that are whipped away instantly by the wind. The cold is like a physical force, pushing against your face. "Storm's coming," you say, letting the flap fall closed again. You can feel it, that particular heaviness in the air that precedes snow. Your father nods. "Need to check the smoke flaps before it hits." The smoke flaps, maybe the most brilliant part of the whole design. These adjustable flaps at the top of the teepee can be positioned using external poles to create just the right draft. In calm weather, they're partly closed to keep heat in while still allowing smoke to escape. When strong winds come, they're angled precisely to create a draft that pulls smoke upward and out without letting snow or rain in. They're basically an ancient HVAC system. Seriously. I studied architecture in college, I once had a professor tell me, and I still can't get over how sophisticated teepee ventilation was. We think we're so clever with our modern technologies, but these solutions were elegant and effective in ways we've forgotten how to appreciate. Your father is already pulling on his buffalo robe to go outside and adjust the flaps. This is critical preparation for the coming storm. Get it wrong and you'll either freeze from too much cold air or suffocate from smoke that can't escape. "Can I help?" you ask. He nods, and you quickly pull on your winter clothing, layers of hide and fur that have been softened by your mother's patient work. The clothing itself is another survival system, designed to trap air between layers, creating insulation that works even when damp. Outside, the wind nearly knocks you over. It screams across the prairie with nothing to slow it down. Your teepee stands with several others in a small circle, all facing east toward the rising sun. This isn't random either. It's protection. The entrance faces away from the prevailing winds, and the sharper backs of the teepees face west, deflecting the strongest gusts. Your father points upward to the protruding poles where the smoke flaps are attached. Together, you use the adjustment poles to position them perfectly, angled to allow smoke out while keeping snow from entering. It's precision work, and you watch carefully. Someday you'll need to do this for your own family. This knowledge, it's not just handy, it's the difference between life and death. "Like this," he demonstrates, moving one flap slightly. "When the wind comes from that direction, we need to create a vacuum that draws the smoke up. You're basically doing fluid dynamics without equations, adjusting the airflow through pure experience and handed-down knowledge." And this, right here, is the key to how the Plains tribes survived winters that would kill the unprepared. They understood their environment completely. They didn't fight against it. They worked with it, using the very forces that threatened to kill them as tools for survival. Back inside, the teepee has transformed into a pocket of remarkable comfort. The fire burns steadily, the smoke rising cleanly through the perfectly adjusted smoke hole. Your mother has heated stones at the edge of the fire. They'll provide radiant heat long after the flames die down. "Breakfast?" she announces, and everyone gathers close to the fire pit. This is how mornings begin in winter on the Great Plains, a daily victory over conditions that modern humans would consider impossible to survive. Yet for centuries, this was just life. Your little sister Nima is already chattering away, describing a dream about running with buffalo. The cold fear of the night is gone, replaced by the ordinary business of a family starting their day. "Will we move the teepee today?" you ask your father. Sometimes in winter, the tribe would relocate even through snow, seeking better hunting or more sheltered ground. He shakes his head. "Not with that storm coming. We're in a good place here, protected." Moving a teepee wasn't simple, but it was far more practical than moving any other type of permanent dwelling. A family could disassemble their entire home in under an hour. The buffalo hide covering would be folded, the poles lashed together to create a travois that could be dragged by dogs, or later horses. I heard from the elders that before horses came, people would use dogs to move everything, your older sister says, as if reading your thoughts. Can you imagine? 20 dogs dragging all those poles. It would take all day just to get a few miles, your father confirms. Horses changed everything. That was the beauty of the teepee. It was a perfectly mobile, perfectly adapted home for a hunting people who needed to follow the migrating buffalo herds, yet it was also sophisticated enough to keep them alive through winters that routinely reached 40 below zero. Sitting here in your warm, modern bed, it's almost impossible to imagine that kind of existence. The constant awareness of survival, the intimate knowledge of wind and weather and materials, the daily dance with death that winter brought. Yet they not only survived, they nomonasin frei, nolai sei, nomo they created cultures, art, music, stories. They raised families and built communities, all within these seemingly fragile structures that were actually marvels of engineering. Outside, the first snowflakes of the coming storm begin to fall. Inside the teepee, your family continues their mourning. The fire crackles, the buffalo hide walls stand firm against the wind. Another winter day begins on the Great Plains, harsh, beautiful, and survivable through ingenuity and knowledge passed down through countless generations. As your mother says every morning, the cold is just another neighbour. Respect it, understand it, and you can live alongside it. For the Plains tribes, that wasn't just a saying, it was the difference between life and death every single winter. The teepee wasn't just a shelter, it was their survival machine. And outside, the snow begins to fall harder, blanketing the world in white. The storm hits just after midday. One moment, the snow is falling gently, big, lazy flakes drifting from a pewter sky. The next, the world transforms into a howling white chaos. The wind comes screaming across the plains like something alive and hungry, carrying ice particles that sting like tiny needles against any exposed skin. Inside the teepee, the change is instant. The walls shudder and strain against the sudden assault. The sound is like nothing else, a deep, thrumming vibration punctuated by sharp cracks as the hide covering tightens in the cold. It's terrifying if you don't understand what's happening, if you don't trust the structure keeping you alive. That came faster than expected, your father says calmly, poking at the fire. His face shows no concern, no fear. He's lived through hundreds of these storms. Your little sister Nima looks up at the walls with wide eyes. Is it angry? It's just wind, your mother tells her, continuing to work the awl through a piece of hide she's repairing. It can't get in. But you're old enough to know that's not entirely true. The wind absolutely can get in if the teepee isn't built right, if the covering isn't stretched properly, if the poles aren't positioned correctly, if the smoke flaps aren't adjusted for the changing conditions. There are a dozen ways this shelter could fail, and any one of them would mean death in a storm like this. Okay, so picture this. Those square cabins that settlers eventually built, they'd shake and rattle and sometimes collapse under these conditions. The flat walls catch the full force of prairie winds like sails, but the teepee, it's basically invisible to the wind. You know why our homes stand in storms while others fall? Your grandfather asked you once. Because we don't fight the wind. We let it pass around us. The genius is in that cone shape, a perfectly calculated angle that gives just enough steepness to shed snow while creating the minimal surface for wind to push against. The storm literally flows around the structure, creating only a fraction of the pressure that would tear apart a square building. My engineering professor showed us computer models of airflow around different structures. I once heard from a Lakota student who studied architectural design. When he pulled up the teepee, he just stopped and said, "This is practically perfect aerodynamics, and they figured it out thousands of years ago without computers or wind tunnels." You watch as your father stands and moves to check the base of the teepee. He's making sure the covering is still securely staked to the ground. In summer, the bottom edge might be rolled up for ventilation, but now it's pegged tightly, with extra snow packed around the perimeter as additional insulation. "Come help," he says to you. You leave the warmth of the fire reluctantly. Even the few feet to the edge of the teepee means a temperature drop. The walls feel cold to the touch, stiff and vibrating slightly from the wind's assault. Your father hands you a bone tool. "Check each stake," he instructs. "Make sure none are loosening." This is critical work. If even one stake pulls free, the wind could get under the covering. And then, well, you've heard stories of teepees being ripped apart in seconds once the wind finds a way inside. You work your way around the circumference, pressing down on each wooden stake, occasionally adding more packed snow as reinforcement. The storm wails outside, but inside the fire continues to burn steadily. The smoke rises straight up through the center hole, drawn by the differential pressure created by the wind flowing over the smoke flaps above. It's like a machine, you think, not for the first time. Every piece working together. The structure, the fire, the covering, the smoke hole, all creating a micro-environment that defies the killing cold outside. Your older sister joins you at the wall. "Listen," she says. You pause, holding your breath. Through the hide walls, you can hear it, the distinctive sound of ice pellets mixing with the snow now. Sleet, the most dangerous kind of winter precipitation. It will coat everything in a slick, deadly layer of ice. "Good thing we're not travelling," you murmur. She nods, her face serious. 2 winters ago, the running deer family got caught in a sleet storm half a day from camp. Only the father made it back. Stories like this are common, not told to frighten, but to teach, to remind everyone that survival isn't guaranteed. It's earned through knowledge, preparation, and respect for the power of winter. Back at the fire, your mother has finished her repair work and is now preparing the evening meal. Food in winter is simple, mostly dried meat and preserved berries, occasionally fresh meat when hunting is good. Today, it's pemmican, a mixture of dried buffalo meat, fat, and berries pounded together. It's not fancy, but it's dense with calories and will keep your body generating heat through the long night ahead. The storm is bringing cold behind it, your father says, returning to the fire. Tonight will freeze the marrow in your bones. That's what the teepee is for, your mother replies with a small smile. She's been building and maintaining these structures her entire life. She trusts them completely. Nima has fallen asleep against your mother's side, lulled by the warmth and the rhythmic sounds of the storm. Your father takes out his pipe, carefully filling it with a mixture of tobacco and herbs. The sweet, earthy smoke will soon join the wood smoke spiraling upward. "Tell me again how the first teepees were made," you ask, settling back on your sleeping robes. You've heard the story many times, but the old stories are comforting during storms. Your father smiles, lighting his pipe with a small twig from the fire. "In the beginning, our people used simple structures, just branches leaned together and covered with whatever hides they had. But they were cold, and smoke filled these lodges because they had no proper opening." He takes a long draw on his pipe. the ember glowing orange in the dimming light of afternoon. Outside, the storm continues to rage. Then Great Spirit sent a dream to Stan's far woman. In her dream, she saw a new kind of lodge, tall poles tied together at the top, open to let out smoke, covered with buffalo hides sewn together just so. He gestures upward with his pipe stem. When she awoke, she told her husband about the dream. Together, they built the first true teepee. Your sister picks up the story. At first, the other people laughed. Why make a lodge so tall? They asked. Why leave a hole for the cold to enter? But when the winter storms came, the laughing stopped. Your father finishes with a nod. Those first teepee dwellers stayed warm and dry while others suffered. Soon everyone wanted to know how to build them. It's just a story, maybe not literally true, but it captures something important about how the teepee came to be, not as a primitive, simple solution, but as a sophisticated design refined over countless generations. Look at how the snow is building up around us, your mother observes, nodding toward the base of the walls. By morning, we'll be half buried. And that's another element of winter survival, using the snow itself as insulation. As it piles against the base of the teepee, it creates an additional barrier against the wind and cold. The teepee doesn't fight the snow, it incorporates it into its defensive strategy. Wait, what was that? The teepee shudders suddenly as a particularly violent gust slams into it. Everyone goes still, listening. There's a new sound, a high whistling tone as the wind finds some small gap in the smoke flaps. Your father is on his feet immediately. We need to adjust the flaps, he says, pulling on his heavy winter robe. The wind has shifted. I'll go, you offer, already reaching for your outer clothing. He shakes his head. Too dangerous now. This is bad. And it is. The teepee shudders again, more violently this time. This isn't normal movement. Something is wrong. Your mother hands your father a long pole with a forked end. It's specifically designed for adjusting the smoke flaps from inside during dangerous weather. He stands directly under the smoke hole, carefully maneuvering the pole upward. You can't actually see what he's doing. It's too dark now and the smoke hole is 15 feet above, but you can feel the results. The high whistling stops abruptly and the teepee's movement becomes more regular again, less violent. The smoke, which had begun to eddy and swirl inside, returns to its proper upward path. Crisis averted. See that? Your father says, returning to the fire and setting the adjustment pole aside. That's why we check everything twice, why we maintain everything properly. One small mistake and he doesn't finish the thought. He doesn't need to. The silence that follows is filled with the sounds of the storm, now muffled and distant again, kept at bay by the ingenious design surrounding you. The fire pops and hisses as a small piece of pitch ignites. Your sister has taken up some beadwork, carefully stringing tiny coloured beads onto a piece of sinew in a pattern passed down through generations. Your mother stirs the evening meal, normal life continuing despite the deadly conditions just inches away. How cold do you think it is out there now, you ask? Your father considers. Cold enough to freeze your breath before it hits the ground, he says finally. Cold enough that exposed skin would turn white in the time it takes to say your name. You all know what that means. Frostbite within minutes. Death not long after. The kind of cold that European settlers would later describe as cold enough to freeze the horns off a bull, the kind that kills without remorse or hesitation. Yet here you sit, relatively comfortable, not toasty warm like in a modern heated home, let's not romanticize it, but alive and functioning. The teepee maintains a temperature somewhere above freezing, maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit on a brutal day like today. With proper clothing and the fire, that's enough to survive. As evening fully settles, the routine of preparing for night begins. The fire is carefully built up to last through the darkest hours. Sleeping robes are arranged around the fire pit in a circle. Children closest to the parents for warmth, adults positioned to easily tend the fire if needed. "Remember," your mother says as she helps Nima into her sleeping robes, "stay covered. Keep your breath inside the robes to warm them." This is crucial advice. The moisture from your breath captured inside the buffalo robes creates additional warmth. It's the same principle modern campers use with their sleeping bags, except the Plains tribes figured it out centuries ago. Your father makes one final check of the teepee before settling down for the night. He adds several large pieces of wood to the fire, pieces specifically chosen to burn slowly through the night. Then he carefully banks ash around the perimeter to help control the burn rate. "Will the storm be gone by morning?" Nima asks sleepily from her robes. "We'll know when morning comes," your mother answers, the traditional response to questions about future weather. It's not evasion, it's wisdom. On the plains, weather can change in moments. Prediction beyond a few hours is foolish. As you settle into your sleeping robes, you notice how the teepee has transformed in the darkness. The hide walls, translucent during daylight, are now opaque, but they're not silent. They continue to vibrate with the storm's fury, creating a constant low thrumming that's oddly comforting once you're used to it. The firelight dances on the curved interior, creating moving shadows that could be frightening if you didn't understand their source. Above, through the smoke hole, occasional glimpses of flying snow are visible against the black sky. No stars tonight, just the storm. "Sleep well," your father says, the traditional night blessing. The teepee stands guard. And despite the howling maelstrom outside, despite temperatures that could kill in minutes, sleep does come. The rhythmic sounds of the storm, the crackle of the fire, the warmth of the robes, and the knowledge that you're surrounded by one of the most effective winter shelters ever devised by human ingenuity, all combine to create a cocoon of relative safety. During the night, you wake briefly as your father rises to add wood to the dying fire. The teepee has cooled considerably, but the walls still stand firm against the ongoing storm. You watch through half-closed eyes as he carefully uncovers the glowing embers, adds 2 large pieces of wood, and then settles back into his robes. The entire process takes less than a minute, minimizing heat loss and exposure to the colder air away from the fire pit. This, too, is part of the survival system, the careful management of the fire through the night. Too little attention and it dies, leaving you vulnerable to the cold. Too much fuel at once and it blazes too hot, wasting precious wood that might be needed later. You drift back to sleep, lulled by the renewed warmth spreading from the revitalized fire. Your dreams are filled with swirling snow and the safety of hide walls. Morning arrives with an eerie silence. The constant background roar of the storm has stopped. The teepee walls no longer vibrate with wind. The only sound is the soft crackle of the fire, now burning low again after the night. Your father is the first to stir. He sits up, immediately alert, in the way of someone whose survival has always depended on awareness. He listens for a moment, then moves to add wood to the fire before checking the door flap. "Snow's up past the door opening," he announces. "We're drifted in." This isn't a cause for alarm. In fact, it's beneficial. The snow piled against the teepee creates an additional layer of insulation. Inside, you're actually warmer than you were when the storm began. "We'll need to dig out," your mother says, already pulling on her outer clothing, "and check the smoke hole." The aftermath of a blizzard brings its own challenges. Smoke holes can become blocked with drifting snow. Hunting becomes difficult. Travel is nearly impossible. But compared to the active storm, these are manageable problems. Your father takes the long adjustment pole and carefully extends it up through the smoke hole, pushing away any accumulated snow. A shower of fine powder falls into the fire, sizzling briefly before evaporating. "Clear," he announces with satisfaction. Outside, the world has been transformed. When you eventually dig out the door and peer outside, the familiar landscape is gone, replaced by sweeping drifts of pristine snow. The other teepees of your small band are visible as cone-shaped mounds, some with thin wisps of smoke rising from their tops. The morning sun glitters on the fresh snow, creating a dazzling, crystalline world. But beauty aside, this is a moment of triumph. Your teepee stands firm, a perfect cone rising from the snow-covered plains. It has done exactly what it was designed to do through thousands of years of refinement. It has kept you alive through conditions that would kill the unprepared within hours. The storm has passed. Your family has survived another winter night on the Great Plains, not through luck or superhuman endurance, but through ingenious design, accumulated knowledge, and respect for both the dangers and the tools of survival. As your father says, brushing snow from his shoulders as he re-enters the teepee, "The winter tests us, the teepee answers." The day after the blizzard dawns crystal clear and brutally cold. The kind of cold that makes the snow squeak under your moccasins, the kind that freezes the moisture from your breath into tiny ice crystals that float in the air like diamond dust. The elders call it killing cold, air so frigid it can stop a heart that's not protected. You step outside the teepee briefly to help your father clear the last of the snow from around the entrance. The shock of the air against your face is like a slap. You can feel the moisture in your eyes trying to freeze. Your nostrils stick together slightly when you breathe in. Your father estimates it's about 40 below zero, cold enough that even wolves and buffalo are seeking whatever shelter they can find. "Don't stay out long," he warns, his words forming thick clouds that hang in the still air. "Quick work, then back inside." Inside the teepee, though, life continues, and that's entirely because of one thing: fire. Not just any fire, a specifically designed, carefully maintained, expertly managed fire that serves as the literal and metaphorical heart of your winter home. Without it, the teepee would just be a hide tent, cold and ultimately deadly in these conditions. With it, the structure becomes a survival system unlike anything else in the world. The fire isn't just for cooking or light, your grandfather told you years ago. It's the life of the teepee. Treat it with respect. As you stamp the snow from your moccasins and duck back through the entrance flap, the contrast between outside and inside hits you immediately. Not like stepping into a modern heated home, it's still cool inside the teepee, but compared to the killing cold outside, it feels almost balmy. Maybe 30 or 40 degrees warmer than the external temperature, putting it somewhere just above freezing inside. Your mother kneels beside the central fire pit, carefully feeding small sticks into the flames. This isn't random or thoughtless work. She's building the fire with precision, creating a specific shape and size based on what's needed today. Too big and we'll smoke ourselves out, she once explained to you. Too small and the cold creeps in. The right fire is like a good song, balanced. The fire pit itself is a marvel of practical engineering. It's not just a ring of stones on the ground, it's a shallow depression dug into the earth, lined with specially selected rocks that absorb heat during the day and radiate it back during the night. The size and shape are precisely calculated for this specific teepee, about 2 feet across, 8 inches deep, positioned exactly in the center where the rising heat will create the most effective circulation. "Hand me the dry sticks," your mother says, not looking up from her work. You reach for a bundle of thin branches that have been stored inside the teepee for exactly this purpose. They've been carefully selected. Not just any wood will do. Some types burn too fast, others too slow. Some create excessive smoke or dangerous sparks. The ideal wood for a teepee fire burns steady and clean. "When I was younger," my uncle told me once during a reservation visit, "my grandmother could tell what kind of wood was burning just by the smell. She'd say, 'That's too much pine, it'll spark and we'll have holes in the teepee cover by morning.' Her knowledge of fire was like a science, but they never wrote it down in books." Your mother arranges the sticks in a careful pattern, building upon the base of embers that have been maintained through the night. There's a method to this: thinner sticks at the bottom to catch quickly, gradually building to thicker pieces that will provide sustained heat. The smoke rises straight up through the center of the teepee, drawn by the natural draft created by the structure's design. It's pulled toward the smoke hole at the top, where the adjustable flaps direct it outward depending on the wind direction. On a still day like today, the smoke simply rises straight up and out, creating a thin column that will be visible from a distance, a sign to any travelers that warmth and safety exist in this place. "Look at the airflow," your father says, noticing you watching the smoke. He picks up a small handful of grass fluff from a storage pouch and releases it near the base of the teepee wall. The tiny particles don't fall straight down. Instead, they're pulled toward the fire and then upward, following a circular path. "The teepee breathes," he explains. "Cold air comes in low, warms by the fire, rises up and out, always moving. That's why we don't suffocate from the smoke." It's a perfect natural ventilation system, one that modern architects still study and admire. The conical shape creates ideal conditions for this circular airflow, while the adjustable smoke flaps at the top allow for fine-tuning depending on weather conditions. "When white men first built cabins on the plains," your uncle once told you, "they didn't understand this airflow. They'd make a fire inside their tight wooden box with just a hole in the roof. Half of them died from smoke in their lungs before they froze to death." Your little sister Nima is sitting close to the fire, helping your mother prepare breakfast. The morning meal is simple: dried meat softened in hot water with a few precious dried berries added for flavor. In the brutal cold after a blizzard, no one ventures far to hunt or gather. You rely on what's been prepared and stored. "The fire feels different today," Nima says, her small face serious in the flickering light. Your mother nods. "Good eyes. We're burning different wood. After a storm we use the denser pieces, slower burn, more heat. This is another element of fire management in a teepee, adapting to changing conditions. The type of wood, the size of the fire, the configuration of the smoke flaps, all these are adjusted based on temperature, wind conditions, and the family's needs. It's a constant dynamic process. The old ones could read a fire like we read tracks, your father says, joining you near the fire pit. They could look at the flames and tell you if a storm was coming, if game was nearby, even if visitors were approaching. Can you do that, you ask? He laughs softly. Some, not all. That knowledge thins with each generation. The fire pops loudly as a pocket of pitch ignites. Sparks swirl upward in a miniature cyclone of orange light. Everyone watches their path until they disappear through the smoke hole, a momentary danger monitored until it passes. "Careful," your mother murmurs, using a stick to push a wandering ember back into the fire pit. Fire discipline is strict inside a teepee. Stray embers can burn through the hide covering or ignite sleeping robes. Children are taught from their earliest days to respect the fire, to understand both its life-giving properties and its dangers. I was doing research on plains tribes for my anthropology degree, I remember a professor saying once, and I was amazed at how few accounts exist of teepees burning down despite having open fires inside structures made of completely flammable materials. Their fire management protocols must have been incredibly sophisticated. By midday, the teepee has warmed to its maximum temperature, with the fire burning steadily and the sun's heat warming the dark hide covering from outside. The interior might reach 50 degrees, downright comfortable compared to the killing cold beyond the walls. Everyone has shed their heaviest furs, though layers are kept close at hand. The weather can change quickly, and the teepee's temperature with it. "Tell us about the fire spirits," Nima requests, as your mother combs and rebraids her hair. Your mother smiles. Again, you've heard it many times. "I like it," Nima insists. "This is how knowledge is passed down, through stories told and retold until they become part of your thinking, part of your survival instinct." "Very well," your mother agrees, her fingers never pausing in their work. "Long ago, when the people were new to the world, they were cold in winter. They had no fire then. They huddled together like deer in the snow, shivering, many dying when the north wind blew." You've heard this story dozens of times, but like Nima, you never tire of it. It's not just entertainment. It contains practical wisdom about fire management wrapped in narrative. "The people prayed to Creator for help," your mother continues. "Creator took pity and sent Coyote to bring fire to the people. Coyote stole a burning brand from the fire beings who lived in a mountain far to the west. As he ran back to the people, the fire beings gave chase." Nima's eyes are wide, caught up in the familiar tale. Your older sister has paused her beadwork to listen as well. "Coyote ran until his breath burned in his chest. The fire began to consume the brand, burning closer to his paws. Just when it seemed he would lose the fire or be caught, Coyote met Hawk. 'Carry this fire to the people,' Coyote gasped. Hawk took the burning brand in his talons and flew high where the fire beings couldn't reach him." Your mother pauses to reach over and feed 2 more sticks to the real fire crackling before you. The timing isn't coincidental. The story and the act of tending the fire are interconnected, part of the same teaching. Hawk brought the fire to the people, but they didn't know how to care for it. It would die or rage out of control. So Creator sent dreams to the wise women of the people, showing them how to keep fire balanced, how to feed it just enough, how to bank it at night so it would live until morning, how to read its moods and needs. She looks pointedly at the fire, then at each of you, and that is why we respect fire, why we learn its ways. It is a gift that must be cared for properly. The story ends, but the lesson continues in practice. Throughout the day, you watch your mother and father tend the fire with a care that borders on reverence. They never let it grow too large or dwindle too small. They select each piece of wood thoughtfully, placing it precisely to achieve the desired burn rate and heat output. As afternoon turns to evening, preparations begin for the night ahead. This is perhaps the most critical time for fire management in the teepee. The night fire needs to burn slowly, steadily, providing heat through the coldest hours without requiring constant attention. "Watch carefully," your father instructs you as he begins the banking process. "Someday you'll need to do this for your family." First, he builds the fire up to a good blaze, creating a solid bed of hot coals. Then he arranges several large, dense pieces of wood in a specific pattern, not stacked randomly, but positioned to burn gradually inward throughout the night. The next step is crucial, and it's where many non-native people would fail at teepee heating. Your father carefully pushes ash around the perimeter of the fire, partially covering the outer edges of the burning wood. This ash layer acts as insulation and control, slowing the burn rate precisely. "Not too much," he murmurs, more to himself than to you. "Still need draw." The final touch is positioning a few key pieces of wood nearby within easy reach of where he'll sleep. These are the morning starters, perfectly sized to revitalize the embers quickly at dawn. "In the deep cold of winter," an elder once told me during a cultural preservation workshop, that morning restart was literally life or death. If the fire went out completely overnight and temperatures were low enough, your fingers might be too stiff with cold to effectively start a new fire. The embers had to be kept alive. Evening brings another teepee adaptation, the addition of the lining. While the outer covering of the teepee is critical for structure and basic protection, the inner lining is what transforms it into a winter-worthy shelter, made of additional buffalo hide or woven reed mats. This lining is hung around the interior, creating a crucial air gap between it and the outer wall. "See how we hang it?" your mother explains to Nima, who's helping with this nightly ritual. "Not touching the outer wall, space between." This air gap is basically the same principle used in modern insulated windows or double-walled vacuum bottles. The trapped air serves as insulation, dramatically reducing heat loss. It's a technology that wouldn't be scientifically understood by Western culture for centuries, but the Plains tribes implemented it through practical observation and generational knowledge. "The lining makes all the difference," your mother continues. "Without it, the heat would pass straight through the walls." With the fire banked and the lining in place, the evening meal is prepared. Again, it's simple winter fare, pemmican mixed with hot water to make a rich, calorie-dense stew. When the buffalo hunting was good last fall, your family prepared hundreds of pounds of pemmican. Ground-dried meat mixed with fat and berries. It will sustain you until spring returns. After eating, the family settles into the rhythm of winter evening activities. Your father repairs a bowstring by firelight. Your older sister continues her beadwork. Your mother tells Nima stories while working on a small pair of moccasins for her. These quiet hours are when much teaching happens, when skills are observed and absorbed. "The teepee is warmest now," your father observes, looking up from his work. "Remember this feeling." He's right. The combination of the day's accumulated heat, the carefully banked fire, the installed lining, and the shared body warmth of the family creates the peak comfort of the day. Outside, the temperature is plummeting as night deepens, probably approaching 50 below zero by now. Inside, you're not exactly toasty, but you're comfortable enough to work on small tasks with bare hands. "The old ones say nights like this are when the ice spirits walk," your sister says, her voice taking on the formal tone of storytelling. "They tap on the walls of the teepee, looking for ways in. They whisper promises to children to lure them outside." "What promises?" Nima asks, wide-eyed. "They promise beautiful visions, ice palaces and frozen wonderlands. But it's a trick. They seek warmth to steal. That's why we stay inside, close to the fire." These aren't just scary stories. They're practical warnings dressed as mythology. The ice spirits are hypothermia and frostbite, very real killers that could take a child who wandered away from the teepee's protection. As full night falls, the fire begins its transformation. The bright flames of daytime gradually give way to a deeper, more concentrated heat. The large logs burn down to a bed of glowing coals that radiate steady warmth with minimal flame. This is by design. A fire that produces more heat than light, more duration than intensity. "Time for sleep," your mother announces when Nima begins to yawn. The sleeping arrangements are another element of the teepee's survival system. Robes are arranged around the fire in a rough circle, with family members positioned strategically. Children are placed between adults for additional warmth. Everyone sleeps with their feet toward the fire. heads toward the walls. This creates the optimal heat distribution. Feet get the most warming, while heads remain in slightly cooler air, which is better for breathing during sleep. Your father makes one final check of the fire before settling into his robes. He uses a long stick to gently push one of the larger logs, adjusting its position by perhaps an inch. To an outsider, this might seem insignificant, but you know it's not. That tiny adjustment might be the difference between a log burning through too quickly or lasting until dawn. Sleep well, he says, the traditional night blessing. The fire watches over us. As the family settles into sleep, the teepee takes on a different character. The interior is darker now, illuminated only by the deep red glow of the banked fire. Shadows are longer, deeper. Outside, the night is utterly silent except for the occasional crack of a tree splitting in the intense cold. Through half-closed eyes, you watch the fire. This isn't the leaping, crackling blaze of daytime. It's quieter, more patient. The carefully arranged logs burn inward at an almost imperceptible rate. The ash banking keeps the oxygen flow precisely controlled. Its fire tamed but not weakened, its heat still radiating outward to keep death at bay. This is the genius that kept the Plains tribes alive through winters that regularly reached 50 or 60 below zero. Not just the teepee structure, though that was crucial, not just the buffalo hide covering, though that was essential, but this mastery of fire, the ability to create and maintain the perfect heat source through the darkest, coldest nights imaginable. In your modern bed, under your warm comforter, it's almost impossible to fully comprehend what this meant. The margin between life and death was measured in degrees. A fire that burned too quickly might leave you vulnerable before dawn. One that put out too much smoke might suffocate you in your sleep. Too large, and it might burn through the teepee covering. Too small, and the cold would creep in, stealing body heat until hearts slowed and stopped. Yet night after night, winter after winter, the Plains tribes maintained this perfect balance. Their understanding of fire wasn't just practical, it approached the spiritual. The fire wasn't just a tool, it was a living entity, a guest in the home, a protector against the night. As you drift towards sleep, the last thing you see is the steady glow at the center of the teepee, the heart of your winter world. The difference between life and morning, or freezing before dawn. Your last conscious thought echoes what your grandmother always said: the fire is always present, and in that presence, survival is possible in a world of ice. Something wakes you in the night, not a sound, not movement, but a sensation, cold, creeping along your side where your buffalo robe has slipped off your shoulder and bunched near your waist. Your eyes open to darkness, save for the dull red glow of the banked fire at the center of the teepee. Everyone else sleeps soundly. Your father, mother, sisters, their breathing forms small clouds in the chilled air. The fire has burned lower than usual, but that's not the real problem. The real problem is the ground beneath you. You can feel it now. That deadly cold seeping upward through the earth, reaching for your warmth like a hungry ghost. Your body has shifted during sleep, and part of your hip now presses against the ground with only a thin layer of bedding between you and the frozen earth below. And here's the thing about winter survival that most modern people never have to learn. The greatest thief of warmth isn't the air, it's the ground. Earth pulls heat from a body faster than wind, your grandfather taught you. Faster than snow, faster than rain, the ground is always hungry for warmth. You carefully readjust your sleeping position, making sure there's adequate insulation between your body and the earth. This small midnight correction might seem trivial in your cozy modern bed, but on the winter plains it could mean the difference between waking with the dawn or not waking at all. The Plains tribes understood something that modern science would later confirm. Conductive heat loss through ground contact can kill you faster than the coldest air. While air is actually a decent insulator when still, the frozen ground will pull body heat away at an alarming rate through direct contact. It's basic thermodynamics. Heat energy flows from warmer objects to cooler ones until they reach equilibrium, and in winter, that frozen ground is always cooler than your body. You know what's funny? My outdoor survival instructor once told our class, modern campers spend hundreds of dollars on fancy sleeping pads to insulate themselves from the ground. Plains Indians figured this out thousands of years ago using just what nature provided. Their ground insulation systems were incredibly sophisticated. As you settle back into your buffalo robes, now properly arranged, you take a moment to appreciate the layered system beneath you. It's not just random furs thrown on the ground. It's a carefully engineered barrier against the Earth's deadly cold. The bottom layer, the one touching the ground directly, is made of woven reed or grass mats. These create the initial separation from the frozen soil and provide some dead air space. Above that is a layer of smaller hides, perhaps deer or antelope, that have been softened through careful tanning. Then comes your primary sleeping robe, a thick buffalo hide with the fur side up to cradle your body. Finally, you have a top covering of additional buffalo hide with the fur turned inward against your body. This entire system, 4 distinct layers of natural materials, creates a remarkably effective barrier against the greatest danger of sleeping in winter conditions. Dawn arrives with its own particular cold, that deep penetrating chill that comes just before sunrise when the night has had the longest time to work its frigid magic. Your father is already up, carefully bringing the fire back from its night-long dormancy. The teepee is colder than it's been since yesterday afternoon, probably hovering just above freezing, but still a good 50 or 60 degrees warmer than outside. Cold night, he observes, noticing you're awake. Ground's trying to steal our warmth. He says this matter-of-factly, not with fear. It's simply a condition to be managed like rain or snow or wind. The ground's theft of heat isn't personal, it's just physics. But understanding that physics, and counteracting it, has kept your people alive through countless winters. Your little sister Nima is curled up in a tight ball inside her sleeping robes, just her nose visible. Children are the most vulnerable to the cold ground. Their smaller bodies lose heat more quickly, and they often kick off coverings during sleep. That's why they're positioned most carefully within the teepee's sleeping arrangement. Look how we place the children, your mother once explained to you, away from the walls where cold comes through, not too close to the fire where sparks might fly, and always with extra insulation beneath them. You watch as your mother stirs now, immediately checking on Nima before she even sits up fully. This protective instinct is built into every aspect of winter survival. "How's the ground?" she asks your father, a question that might seem strange to outsiders but makes perfect sense in your world. "Hungry," he replies. "We should refresh the mats today." This is part of the regular winter maintenance of a teepee. The ground insulation doesn't just get placed once and forgotten. It needs regular adjustment, fluffing, sometimes complete replacement if it gets compressed or damp. Compressed insulation loses its effectiveness because it's the air trapped within materials that provides much of the insulating value. "I can help," you offer, sitting up but keeping your robe wrapped tightly around you. The air in the teepee is noticeably colder at this height, away from the growing fire. Your father nods, then points to a stack of fresh grass mats rolled against the teepee wall. "We'll use those. The ones underneath us now have been compressed too long." This task will be your main chore for the morning, helping to maintain the critical barrier between your family and the frozen earth. It's not glamorous work, it's not hunting or warfare or any of the more celebrated skills, but it's just as essential to survival. As the fire builds strength, bringing welcome warmth to the teepee, your mother begins preparing the morning meal. Nima finally emerges from her robes, her hair wild from sleep, her small face still marked with the imprints of fur where she pressed against it through the night. I dreamed the ground was talking to me, she announces, crawling over to sit beside you. What did it say, you ask, humouring her. She considers seriously before answering. It said it was lonely and wanted me to come closer. Her expression turns proud, but I told it no. Your mother looks up sharply at this. Good, she says with unusual intensity. Always tell the ground no when it calls you in winter. This isn't just playful conversation with a child, it's survival teaching wrapped in terms a 4-year-old can understand. The ground's call is hypothermia, the dangerously comfortable sensation of warmth that comes paradoxically when the body is approaching freezing. Many winter deaths happen when this false warmth leads people to remove clothing or press themselves against the snow or frozen ground, accelerating their demise. I once interviewed an elder from the northern Cheyenne, an anthropologist told me, who described teaching children that the winter ground sings sweet songs to trick you. It wasn't superstition, it was an ingenious way to warn kids about the symptoms of hypothermia without complex medical terminology. After breakfast, the work of refreshing the ground insulation begins. First, everything must be moved to one side of the teepee. Sleeping robes, personal possessions, cooking implements. This reveals the flattened, compressed mats that have served as your barrier against the frozen earth. See how thin they've become, your father points out, lifting a corner of one mat. What had once been a springy, fluffy layer of woven grasses and reeds has been pressed down to less than half its original thickness. No air left in them, no protection. The old mats are rolled up and set aside. They'll be placed outside to freeze, then beaten to remove dust and debris before being allowed to fully dry and re-fluff for future use. Nothing is wasted in this environment where every resource requires precious energy to obtain. The new mats are unrolled and arranged carefully over the exposed ground. They overlap slightly, ensuring no bare earth is accessible. Their fresh thickness is immediately apparent, a good 2 inches of woven material creating crucial dead air space between the inhabitants and the frozen ground. Always start with the ground, your mother says, repeating one of her frequent winter teachings. A warm fire means nothing if the earth steals your heat from below. This isn't just a saying, it's practical physics. Even with a robust fire raising the air temperature inside the teepee to relatively comfortable levels, direct contact with the frozen ground can drain body heat faster than the fire can replace it. The insulating layer breaks that direct contact, creating a thermal barrier that allows your body to maintain its crucial core temperature. With the fresh mats in place, the next layer is added, the deer and antelope hides that provide additional insulation and a smoother surface. These smaller, more supple hides are perfect for this middle layer, not as thick and warm as buffalo robes, but more pliable and better at conforming to the somewhat uneven surface of the woven mats. The layers work together, your father explains as you help him position a particularly large antelope hide. Each does a different job. On top of these middle layer hides come the primary sleeping robes, the thick buffalo hides where your bodies will actually rest. These are arranged with the fur side up, creating a soft, insulating surface that traps body heat effectively. Each family member has their own designated sleeping space and their own personal robes, sized and prepared appropriately. "Mine needs to be replaced soon," your older sister observes, examining her primary sleeping robe. "The fur is wearing thin in spots from regular use, maybe after the spring hunt. We'll make it last until then," your mother assures her. "We can add one of the smaller hides beneath it for now." This layering system is remarkably sophisticated when you consider the materials available. Modern sleeping bags use synthetic fills or down insulation, often with reflective materials to bounce body heat back toward the sleeper. The Plains tribes achieved nearly the same result, using only what the natural world provided, and they did it well enough to survive temperatures that regularly plunged to lethal levels. The R value of a properly prepared buffalo hide is surprisingly high, a materials science professor once told me during a research project on indigenous technologies. Combined with their layering techniques, Plains tribes created ground insulation that could rival modern camping equipment in effectiveness, and they did it without any of our contemporary materials science. By midday, the teepee floor has been completely refreshed. The new insulation creates a noticeably more comfortable living surface, springier, loftier, and critically warmer. With the fire now burning steadily and the ground insulation renewed, the interior of the teepee has reached its daytime equilibrium temperature, probably somewhere in the upper 30s or low 40s Fahrenheit. Not toasty by modern standards, but more than adequate for survival with proper clothing. "Good," your father pronounces, surveying the completed work. "This will keep the ground spirit at bay." Outside, another clear, brutally cold day unfolds. These are actually the most dangerous winter days on the plains. The cloudless skies that follow storms allow heat to radiate away from the earth rapidly, creating the deepest cold. Today might reach 20 below at its warmest, dropping back to 40 or 50 below once the sun sets. Without proper shelter and insulation, no human could survive for long. But inside the teepee, life continues. Your mother works on moccasin repairs, your sister returns to her beadwork, and Nima plays with small dolls made from corn husks and scraps of hide. Your father plans to check his traps later, a risky but necessary venture into the killing cold to seek fresh meat. You sit cross-legged on your newly arranged sleeping robe, using a small bone knife to carve a piece of antler into a tool. The work is detailed, requiring bare hands, which would be impossible without the combined warmth from the fire and the insulation beneath you, preventing the ground from stealing your body heat. "Tell me again about the different sleepers," Nima requests, abandoning her dolls to scoot closer to you. This is a teaching story you've told her before, a way of explaining the teepee's sleeping arrangements that a child can understand and remember. "Well," you begin, setting aside your carving, "there are 4 kinds of sleepers in winter. The wise sleeper sets her bed with many layers between herself and the ground. She sleeps warm through the night and wakes strong in the morning." Nima nods seriously. She knows this role. It's what she aspires to be. "The foolish sleeper," you continue, lowering your voice dramatically, "puts his robe directly on the bare ground. He feels warm at first, but the ground steals his heat in the night. He wakes cold and weak if he wakes at all. The ground is sneaky," Nima interjects, with the wisdom of her 4 winters. "Yes, very sneaky," you agree. Then there's the restless sleeper who tosses and turns and pushes his robes aside. The cold air finds him, and he shivers until dawn. Like father, Nima giggles, glancing at your father, who smiles without looking up from his work. And finally, you conclude, there's the careful sleeper. She checks her bedding before sleep, keeps her fire tended through the night, and never lets any part of her body touch the ground directly. She respects winter, but doesn't fear it. I'm a careful sleeper, Nima declares proudly. You're learning to be, your mother corrects gently from where she sits. We're all learning, always. And that's perhaps the most important aspect of winter survival in the teepee, the constant learning, adapting and refining of techniques. Nothing is static, nothing is assumed. The environment is too deadly for complacency. As afternoon begins to slide toward evening, bringing the promise of even deeper cold, your father prepares for his trap-checking expedition. The layers he puts on demonstrate another aspect of winter survival. Clothing as insulation. First, a base layer of soft tanned hide against his skin, then a middle layer of fur with the hair turned inward. Finally, an outer layer of thicker hide to block wind. Be back before dark, your mother instructs, handing him an extra pair of lined mittens. The ground gets hungrier after sunset. He nods, understanding completely. After dark, the temperature will drop precipitously, and the risk increases exponentially. His insulated moccasins, themselves a marvel of winter engineering with multiple layers and liners, will protect him from ground-conducted heat loss while he moves, but they have their limits. After he leaves, ducking through the door flap and letting in a brief, shocking gust of frozen air, your mother begins the evening meal preparations. Tonight it will be pemmican again, but with the last of some dried squash added for variety. The smell fills the teepee, rich, fatty, nourishing food that provides the calories needed to generate body heat through the night. When your grandmother was a girl, she tells you while working, her family was caught in an early blizzard before they'd prepared enough winter food. They had to be careful with every bite, saving the fattiest portions for the coldest nights. The thin broth they ate most days barely kept them alive. This isn't just a story about hardship, it's a teaching about the direct relationship between food, body heat, and survival. The Plains tribes understood intuitively what science now confirms. The body is essentially a furnace that converts food energy into heat. In extreme cold, that furnace needs constant, high-quality fuel. As evening settles in and the light outside fades to purple, then indigo, then black, the teepee undergoes its nightly transformation. The fire is built up to its evening strength. The insulating liner is checked and adjusted. Sleeping robes are arranged precisely on the fresh ground insulation, positioned to optimize both warmth from the fire and protection from the frozen earth below. Your father returns just as full darkness falls, bringing welcome news. 2 rabbits in the traps, not a feast but fresh meat that will provide variety and critical fat and protein. The teepee feels instantly more complete with his return, the family circle whole again. The cold is deepening, he reports as he sheds his outer layers. The trees are cracking in the forest. Everyone understands what this means. The temperature is dropping so rapidly that the moisture inside tree trunks is freezing and expanding, causing the wood to split with explosive cracks. It's a sound unique to the deepest cold, a warning that tonight will test the limits of your teepee's protection. After the evening meal, as night fully claims the world outside, the final preparations for sleep begin. Each sleeping robe is checked once more for proper positioning. The fire is carefully built to last through the night. Small personal possessions are tucked safely away, where they won't be damaged by contact with the fire or the cold walls. "Remember," your mother says to Nima, tucking the little girl into her sleeping robes, "stay on your buffalo, friend." This is how she refers to the sleeping robe, as a protective friend that must be respected and appreciated. "I will," Nima promises solemnly. "I won't listen to the ground songs." As you settle into your own sleeping place, you're acutely aware of the multiple layers beneath you, the fresh grass mats, the middle layer hides, your primary buffalo robe. This layered system, refined over countless generations, creates a remarkably effective barrier between your body and the frozen earth that would otherwise drain your heat relentlessly through the night. The last thing you see before sleep takes you is your father making a final adjustment to the fire, his face illuminated in the warm glow. Outside, the winter night drops toward unimaginable cold. Inside, separated from that deadly chill by ingenious layers of natural insulation, your family rests securely. The ground may be hungry for heat, but tonight at least it will go unsatisfied. You wake to the sound of something large moving outside the teepee. The darkness is almost complete, just the faint red glow of the night's fire illuminating the interior. A glance toward the smoke hole shows no hint of dawn yet. Your father is already awake, sitting up silently, head tilted in that specific way that means he's listening intently. Another sound, the unmistakable huffing breath of a large animal followed by the soft crunch of hooves on packed snow. It's close, maybe just a few feet from the teepee wall near your head. Your father meets your eyes and mouths a single word: buffalo. A wild buffalo, drawn perhaps by the lingering scent of the hides that form your shelter, has wandered near your camp in the pre-dawn darkness. There's no immediate danger. The massive animal isn't aggressive unless threatened. But the irony isn't lost on either of you. The very creature whose skin protects you from the killing winter has come to investigate its fallen kin. "The circle continues," your father whispers as the buffalo moves away, its heavy footsteps fading into the darkness. This moment, this connection between the living buffalo and the transformed hides that form your winter shelter, perfectly captures an essential truth of plains survival. The buffalo wasn't just food, it was life itself, especially in winter. "Everything we have comes from buffalo," your grandfather used to say. "Our homes, our clothes, our tools, our food. Without buffalo, we would vanish from the earth when the snow flies." As the first hint of grey dawn light begins to filter through the smoke hole, you stay wrapped in your buffalo robes, contemplating the layers of hide that stand between you and certain death in the winter cold. The teepee's outer covering, your sleeping robes, your winter clothing, all came from the buffalo, and not just any part of the buffalo, but specifically prepared hides transformed through knowledge and labour into something far greater than the sum of its parts. Hold up. Let me tell you something wild. When my uncle was building a traditional teepee for a cultural preservation project, he showed me a sample of properly prepared buffalo hide. "Feel this," he said, handing me a piece about 2 feet square. I was shocked. Despite being maybe a 1/4 inch thick, it had incredible insulating properties. One side felt noticeably warmer than the other, even in a heated room. "Now imagine this surrounding you in a teepee," he said. Multiply that effect by about 20 times. That's when I really understood what these winter shelters were capable of. Your mother is awake now too, carefully adding wood to rebuild the morning fire. As the flames grow, the interior of the teepee transforms from dark to dimly lit, then to the warm golden glow that defines your winter days. The hide walls, semi-translucent, begin to glow from the outside as the rising sun hits them, not enough to see through, but enough to tell light from darkness. Today, we finish the new winter robes, your mother announces once everyone is awake and has eaten the morning meal. She gestures toward a stack of buffalo hides in various stages of preparation that are stored carefully along one section of the teepee wall. This is vital winter work, the constant maintenance and creation of the buffalo hide products that make survival possible. Nothing lasts forever, especially items in daily use in harsh conditions. Preparing replacement hides is a continuous process throughout winter. "Can I help with the scraping?" you ask, eager to practice this crucial skill. She nods approvingly. The larger hide needs the final smoothing. Making a winter-worthy buffalo hide isn't just a matter of skinning the animal and throwing the result over your shoulders. The process is complex, time-consuming, and requires substantial expertise, and the resulting product is as different from a raw hide as modern Gore-Tex is from a plastic garbage bag. Most people have no idea what goes into preparing a buffalo hide properly, a native craftswoman told me during a cultural demonstration. When early European traders tried to prepare their own, they'd end up with stiff, rotting sheets that provided almost no insulation. They didn't understand that the magic is in the processing. The first stage, the initial cleaning and rough fleshing, is done immediately after the hunt, but the fine work, the transformation of raw material into survival gear, is often done inside during winter months when outdoor activities are limited by the cold. Your mother spreads the nearly completed hide on the floor of the teepee, the side that once held the buffalo's flesh facing upward. Despite multiple previous scrapings, tiny bits of membrane are still visible in places. These must be removed for the hide to reach its final supple state. She hands you a scraper, a specialized tool made from buffalo bone with a carefully shaped edge that's sharp enough to remove unwanted material without cutting the hide itself. The design has been refined over thousands of years to perfectly match the task. "Remember," she instructs, "always work in the same direction. Feel for the rough spots with your fingertips first." You begin the methodical work, scraping in long, even strokes. It's surprisingly physical labor, using shoulder and arm muscles in a way that generates welcome warmth on this cold morning. Your younger sister Nima watches intently, not yet trusted with the sharp scraper, but learning through observation as she has since birth. "Will this be my new sleeping robe?" your older sister asks, working on a different hide nearby. "No, this one will be for the inner lining," your mother replies. "See how it's thinner in this section? Not ideal for primary insulation, but perfect for the liner." This casual exchange contains deep technical knowledge. Different parts of the buffalo hide have different properties. The hide from the hump and shoulder area is thicker with denser fur, ideal for primary insulation in sleeping robes. The hide from the flank is thinner but more pliable, better for clothing or secondary layers. Nothing is wasted and nothing is used inappropriately. Each piece has its perfect purpose. "Like a puzzle," your father comments from where he sits repairing a bow. "Every piece of the buffalo fits somewhere in our survival." He's not exaggerating. Beyond the obvious uses of meat for food and hide for shelter and clothing, virtually every part of the buffalo serves a survival purpose. Bones become tools, sinew becomes thread and bowstrings, hooves become glue, stomachs become water containers. The buffalo is a complete survival kit provided by nature. But it's the hide, particularly in winter, that represents perhaps the most crucial transformation. Through specific processing techniques, what begins as a perishable biological material becomes something that can withstand brutal weather conditions while providing remarkable insulation. "The secret is in the brain," your mother often says when teaching hide preparation. She's referring to the practice of using the animal's own brain matter as a tanning solution, a technique that produces a uniquely effective result. The brain tanning process creates a hide with incredible properties. An archaeologist specializing in indigenous technologies once explained to me, it makes the material water-resistant while maintaining breathability. It prevents rotting while keeping flexibility. And most importantly, for winter survival, it creates tiny air pockets within the fiber structure that dramatically increase insulating value. By midday, the scraping work is complete and your mother moves to the next stage, softening the hide through repeated folding and working. This isn't just busy work, it's literally breaking down the fiber structure to create those crucial microscopic air pockets that will trap warmth. In, out, back, forth, she chants rhythmically as she works the hide with strong, practiced movements. The more we work it, the warmer it keeps us. Nima tries to help, her small hands pushing ineffectually against the stiff material. "It's fighting me," she complains. Your mother smiles. "It always fights at first. That's how you know it will be strong. The best hides are the ones that resist the longest." Outside, another brilliantly clear winter day means continuing brutal cold. These bluebird days after storms are deceptive. They look inviting with their crystalline beauty, but the temperature remains deadly. Your father reports it might be 15 below at midday, warmer than the morning, but still cold enough to freeze exposed skin within minutes. Inside the teepee, the contrast is remarkable. With the fire burning steadily and everyone engaged in physical work, the temperature has risen to a relatively comfortable level. You've shed your heaviest fur layer, working now in just your inner clothing, though keeping the heavier pieces close at hand for when you eventually need to step outside. "Feel this," your mother says late in the afternoon, handing you the hide you've been helping to prepare. "It's ready." The transformation is remarkable. What began as a stiff, somewhat unyielding material has become soft and pliable. When you fold it, it no longer tries to spring back into flatness. When you squeeze it, you can feel the give of thousands of tiny air pockets. When you hold it up to the light coming through the smoke hole, there's a subtle translucency that wasn't there before. Most importantly, when you drape it over your arm, you can immediately feel the warmth building between the hide and your skin. The insulating properties have been awakened through the working process. "Tomorrow we'll smoke it," your mother says, carefully folding and setting the hide aside. "That will give it the final protection." The smoking process, exposing the prepared hide to specific types of wood smoke, does more than add the characteristic amber color. It creates chemical changes in the hide that increase water resistance and help prevent decay. It's the final step in transforming a natural material into a survival technology. As evening approaches and the light begins to fade, your family prepares for another winter night. The buffalo hide that surrounds you in the form of the teepee covering is about to face its greatest daily test. When darkness falls completely, the temperature will plummet, likely reaching 40 below zero or colder before dawn. The thin barrier of processed hide will be all that stands between your family and that killing cold. Your father checks the smoke flaps, adjusting them slightly as the wind shifts. A properly positioned flap creates the ideal draft for the fire, while preventing snow or rain from entering. Another example of how the processed buffalo hide isn't just a passive barrier, but an active part of a sophisticated environmental control system. "The old ones say this will be the coldest night of the winter," he comments, returning to the fire. "The buffalo are gathering in the sheltered valleys." Animals know. Their behavior is often the best predictor of severe weather, and the plains tribes learn to read these signs with remarkable accuracy. If the buffalo are seeking shelter, the night ahead will be brutal indeed. As darkness falls fully, your mother begins distributing the extra robes, additional buffalo hides kept in reserve for the coldest nights. Some are placed as additional insulation beneath the sleeping areas. Others are laid out to be pulled over your regular sleeping robes as a second layer. A few are hung as additional insulation along the teepee walls where the prevailing wind hits hardest. Layer upon layer, she says as she works. That's how we survive when others freeze. This layering principle is perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of the plains winter survival system. A single buffalo hide provides good insulation. Two hides with a small air gap between them provide exponentially better insulation. 3 layers create a nearly impenetrable thermal barrier. It's the same principle used in modern high-end winter clothing. Multiple layers with trapped air providing far better insulation than a single thick layer. I once asked a physics professor about Plains Indian winter insulation techniques, a museum curator told me. He said they were essentially creating a primitive vacuum flask effect with their layering systems. The science was sound, even if they didn't call it thermodynamics. Your little sister Nima is already wrapped in her sleeping robes, though the evening meal hasn't even been prepared yet. She's learned through experience that maintaining body heat is easier than rebuilding it once lost. "I'm in my buffalo cocoon," she announces happily, only her face visible among the furs. Cocoon is actually the perfect word. These aren't just covers, they're transformative enclosures that create a microclimate around the body. Inside Nima's buffalo robes, the temperature might be 70 degrees or warmer from her body heat, while just inches away, the air in the teepee is barely above freezing. The evening meal is simple but calorie-dense. More of the precious pemmican, this time mixed with dried choke cherries saved from the fall harvest. These high-fat, high-protein meals are essential for winter survival, providing the fuel your bodies need to generate heat through the long, cold night ahead. Eat everything, your mother encourages, particularly focusing on Nima. Your body needs the strength to fight the cold. This isn't just a parent encouraging a picky eater, it's a survival imperative. In extreme cold, the body burns calories at an accelerated rate just to maintain core temperature. Without adequate caloric intake, hypothermia becomes a real threat, especially for smaller bodies. After eating, the final preparations for the night begin. Your father banks the fire carefully, arranging the wood to burn slowly through the hours of darkness. Your mother checks each sleeping area one last time, ensuring the layers are properly arranged for maximum insulation. "Remember," she says, her nightly reminder, "keep your breath inside your robes. Keep your body on the insulation. Keep your head covered but able to breathe." These aren't random instructions, they're specific survival techniques refined over countless winter nights. Breathing inside the robes adds moisture and heat to the microclimate. Staying completely on the insulation prevents conductive heat loss to the ground. Covering the head while maintaining airflow prevents both heat loss and carbon dioxide buildup. As the family settles for sleep, you take a moment to appreciate the multiple layers of buffalo-provided protection that surround you. The outer teepee covering shields you from wind and snow. The inner lining creates a crucial air gap for added insulation. The ground covering prevents Earth's cold from stealing your warmth. Your sleeping robes create a personal microclimate. Even your clothing, the soft inner layer and the heavier outer pieces kept within reach for morning, came from the same essential animal. We carry the buffalo through winter, and the buffalo carries us, your grandfather used to say. It wasn't just a poetic expression, it was literal truth. Outside, the temperature continues to drop as the stars blaze in the black winter sky. Inside, wrapped in your buffalo hide cocoon, you drift towards sleep, warm and protected through the ingenuity of generations who learned to transform what nature provided into a survival system of remarkable effectiveness. The last thought that crosses your mind before sleep takes you is simple gratitude for the buffalo, for the knowledge passed down through your family, and for the thin wall of processed hide that makes life possible in a world of ice. Sometime deep in the night, the fire dies down lower than usual. You don't fully wake, but your body registers the change in temperature. The teepee has cooled several degrees. Outside, the winter night has reached its coldest point, that brutal hour before dawn when even the wolves stop howling and the trees crack like gunshots in the impossible cold. Still mostly asleep, you instinctively shift closer to your sister's sleeping form. She murmurs something unintelligible, but also moves slightly, the two of you finding a shared warmth that neither could generate alone. Across the teepee floor, your mother has drawn little Nima completely against her side, the child's body tucked into the curve of her own like nested spoons. This unconscious nighttime choreography, this subtle shifting and rearrangement of bodies, isn't random. It's an essential survival mechanism, perhaps the most ancient one humans possess: shared body heat, the understanding that together we generate more warmth than we can alone. Watch wolves in winter, your father once told you, while you observed a pack from a distance. They don't sleep apart, they pile together, sharing their heat. We learned this from the animals long before we built the first shelter. When morning finally arrives, you wake to find yourself sandwiched between both sisters, all three of you having migrated toward each other during the night. Your father is already up, carefully rebuilding the fire from its reduced state. Outside, the world is still gripped by profound cold, but the faint grey light of dawn promises that the sun will eventually return. Coldest night of the winter, he confirms, noticing you're awake. The water froze inside the pouch. This is significant. The water pouch is kept near the center of the teepee, not far from the fire. For it to freeze solid means the temperature inside dropped substantially during the night. Good thing we sleep close, your older sister mumbles, also awakening. I'd be ice without you two heat rocks next to me. She's not exaggerating. On the coldest winter nights, shared body heat can literally be the difference between life and death. The Plains tribes understood this at a bone-deep level and organized their winter sleeping arrangements accordingly. When I was studying indigenous winter survival, an anthropologist once told me, I was struck by how intentional the sleeping arrangements were in traditional teepees. It wasn't just about family closeness, it was a carefully designed human heating system. Your mother stirs now, checking first on Nima, who remains deeply asleep against her side. Satisfied the child is warm and well, she sits up, keeping her buffalo robe wrapped tightly around both of them. The old ones say the coldest nights show us who we truly are, she observes, watching your father work with the fire. Alone we freeze, together we live. This isn't just a poetic saying, it's practical physics. A single human body generates about 100 watts of heat, comparable to a small incandescent light bulb, but much of that heat dissipates into the surrounding environment. When bodies are close together, they create a shared microclimate, dramatically reducing heat loss and effectively multiplying the warming effect. Today's plans are simple. Remain inside the teepee as much as possible. This isn't laziness or fear, it's practical energy conservation. On the coldest days, the tribe minimizes outside activity, understanding that valuable calories burned in needless exposure could be better preserved for essential survival. For only hunt when the meat is worth more than the warmth it costs to get it, goes an old Plains saying. Today, that equation is simple. Staying inside conserves more energy than any potential gain from venturing out. The morning routine begins with the teepee already more crowded than usual. Another family, your father's sister, her husband, and their young son, have joined you during the night. Their own teepee stands nearby, but with a tear in the covering that couldn't be properly repaired in the dark. They sought shelter with your family rather than risk the deadly cold. The tear's not large, your aunt explains as she helps prepare a morning meal for the expanded group, but even a small opening lets death in on a night like last night. No one questions their presence or considers it an imposition. This mutual support is assumed in winter survival. Next time, it might be your family seeking emergency shelter with them. The harsh reality of Plains winter forces a community approach to survival. No family could make it alone. 9 bodies in one teepee, my Lakota friend once laughed when I asked about winter crowding. That's nothing. My grandmother told stories of 15 people sheltering together during the worst blizzards. It was uncomfortable, sure, but everyone lived. With 9 people now sharing your family's teepee, the interior warms noticeably faster than usual after the fire is rebuilt. Body heat combines with the growing fire to raise the temperature several degrees higher than it would normally reach on such a frigid morning. Your father's brother-in-law notices it too. "We should have torn our covering days ago," he jokes, loosening his buffalo robe slightly in the improved warmth. Beneath the humour lies a practical observation about winter survival. More bodies equal more heat. It's simple thermodynamics. In extreme cold, the added warmth from additional people could provide a crucial margin of safety, especially if firewood became scarce or the weather worsened further. The morning meal is a community affair, with both families sharing their food stores. Your mother adds extra water to the pemmican stew, stretching it to feed more mouths. No one takes more than they need, understanding instinctively that winter survival depends on this careful balance of resources. As the day progresses, the teepee becomes a hub of indoor winter activities. Your father and uncle repair hunting tools in one section, the women work on hides and clothing in another, children play quiet games in the limited central space. Everyone remains within the protective envelope of the teepee's warmth, conserving energy while still accomplishing necessary tasks. Winter was never idle time, a tribal elder once explained during a cultural preservation workshop. The work just moved indoors. Every day still mattered for survival, but the focus shifted to maintenance, repair, and preparation rather than hunting or travelling. By midday, your aunt's family has decided their teepee can be repaired. The temperature outside has risen to perhaps 10 or 15 below zero, still dangerously cold, but manageable for quick, necessary tasks. The men bundle up heavily and head out to assess and fix the damage, while the women remain with the children in your family's shelter. "They'll work faster knowing we're warm in here," your mother observes as the men leave. No divided attention. This highlights another aspect of the community approach to winter survival, specialized tasks based on practical considerations. The men, generally larger and with more body mass to generate and retain heat, handle the outdoor emergency repairs. The women maintain the core shelter and care for the children. It's not about gender roles as much as thermodynamic efficiency, utilizing each person's attributes for maximum collective survival. "Look how the babies stay in the middle," your aunt says, nodding toward where Nima and her son play near the center fire. They know without being told. She's right. Even the youngest members of the tribe have absorbed crucial survival lessons. The children instinctively stay closest to the fire and surrounded by adults, understanding at some primal level that their smaller bodies need the additional protection of this central position. Your mother nods. Nima learned to crawl toward warmth before she could walk toward anything else. This isn't just maternal observation, it's recognition of how deeply survival adaptations run in a people who have lived with winter as a constant threat. Children aren't taught these behaviors through formal instruction so much as they absorb them through observation and experience from birth. Indigenous winter survival wasn't a separate skill set, an environmental psychologist once explained to me. It was woven into every aspect of existence. Children internalized life-saving behaviors simply by being part of the community. The men return after about an hour, their faces red from the brief exposure despite being heavily protected. The damage to the other teepee has been repaired. A small tear near the smoke hole that allowed precious heat to escape and dangerous cold to enter. "Should hold now," your uncle announces, warming his hands by your family's fire. "But we might stay one more night if you'll have us, just to be sure." No one questions this cautious approach. When temperatures drop to 40 or 50 below zero at night, there's no room for uncertainty or risk. A teepee with a questionable repair is a gamble no one would take with their family's lives. "Of course you'll stay," your father replies simply. "The cold hasn't left yet." As afternoon drifts toward evening, preparations begin for another frigid night. Both families work together now, creating a more efficient system than either could manage alone. Your father and uncle gather and prepare extra firewood from the carefully rationed winter store. Your mother and aunt rearrange the teepee's interior to optimize sleeping spaces for 9 people instead of 5. This reconfiguration isn't haphazard. It follows patterns established through countless winters of experience. The youngest children will sleep between adults for maximum warmth. Elders, if present, would be positioned closer to the fire. Everyone is arranged in a rough circle around the central hearth, heads toward the walls, feet toward the warmth. Like spokes on a wheel, your mother explains as she lays out the sleeping robes. Every person connected to the heart of the teepee. This arrangement isn't just practical for warmth distribution, it also creates a unified breathing space near the center and fire, slightly warmer than the air at the teepee's edges. Through the night, this shared air pocket will be warmed by both the banked fire and the combined exhalations of 9 people. I once measured the temperature differential in a traditional winter teepee, an environmental scientist told me during a research project. The difference between the sleeping area near the edges and the common breathing space near the center could be as much as 15 to 20 degrees. That's an enormous survival advantage created simply through body arrangement. As evening approaches and the light outside fades, the expanded group shares a communal meal, everyone contributing something from their winter stores. The conversation flows easily despite the crowded conditions. Stories are told, information is shared about hunting conditions and weather signs. Children are entertained with riddles and simple games. This social aspect of winter teepee life isn't separate from survival. It's an integral part of it. The psychological comfort of community during the darkest, coldest season helps maintain morale and purpose. The sharing of information ensures no single family misses crucial observations that might affect their safety. "Winter was when we became most truly a people," a Blackfoot elder once told me. "In summer, families might spread out to hunt or gather, but in winter, we drew together, not just for warmth, but to remember who we were." As full darkness falls and the temperature outside plummets once again, the final preparations for night begin. The fire is built up to its evening strength, carefully designed to burn steadily through the hours of darkness. The teepee's smoke flaps are adjusted for optimal draft, given the current wind direction and the increased number of inhabitants. The interior liner, that critical second layer of buffalo hide hung inside the teepee, is checked and adjusted. With more people in the shelter, there's additional moisture from breath and bodies that could potentially condense on the cold outer walls. The liner not only adds insulation, but also creates a surface where this moisture can collect without dripping back onto the inhabitants. See how it beads up, your father points out, showing your younger cousin the droplets forming on the inner surface of the liner. That's our breath. If this liner wasn't here, that moisture would freeze on the outer wall instead and eventually melt and drip on us when the sun warms the teepee tomorrow. This understanding of condensation management is yet another sophisticated aspect of teepee design. Without modern ventilation systems, the Plains tribes created their own methods of handling the challenging physics of moisture in winter shelters. Finally, as the teepee reaches its nighttime configuration, everyone prepares for sleep. Extra robes are distributed, ensuring even the latest arrivals have adequate insulation above and below their bodies. The fire is banked one final time, set to burn slowly through the hours until dawn. 9 people now occupy a space perhaps 15 feet in diameter. By modern standards, it would be considered impossibly crowded for sleeping, but in the context of winter survival on the plains, this density isn't just acceptable, it's optimal. We'll be warmer tonight than we were last night, your mother observes with satisfaction. Many lungs, many hearts. She's right, of course. The additional bodies mean additional heat generation, perhaps an extra 400 watts of thermal energy that wasn't present the previous night. In survival terms, that's an enormous difference. As you settle into your sleeping place, now positioned between your sister and your cousin, rather than just beside your sister, you notice how quickly the shared sleeping area warms, with 3 bodies now contributing heat to a space that previously held 2. The microclimate under the buffalo robes reaches a comfortable temperature much faster than usual. Outside, the night deepens toward another testing of human endurance. The stars shine with the particular brilliance that only comes with extreme cold. The snow creaks under the occasional passage of nocturnal animals. The trees continue their random gunshot-like cracking as sap freezes and expands within their trunks. Inside the teepee, 9 people breathe in rhythm, their combined presence creating a pocket of survivable warmth in a landscape of killing cold. The fire glows at the center, the physical and symbolic heart of this temporary community. The buffalo hide walls stand firm against the night, transformed through human ingenuity from mere animal skin to sophisticated environmental barrier. Look at how we survive, your grandfather would say. Not alone, but together. Not through strength, but through wisdom. As sleep approaches, your last conscious thought is one of security. Not just in the physical shelter of the teepee, but in the presence of the expanded circle of family around you. In the harshest environment imaginable, humans have found a simple truth. Our greatest survival tool isn't fire or shelter or clothing, it's each other. Morning brings an unexpected change. You wake to a different quality of light filtering through the teepee covering. Brighter, somehow softer. The air feels different too. Not quite warmer, but less aggressively cold, less brittle. Your father is already up, standing near the door flap, looking outside. The wind has shifted, he announces to the stirring families. Chinook is coming. A ripple of reaction passes through the adults. A chinook, that remarkable warm wind that can sometimes sweep down from the mountains in midwinter, raising temperatures dramatically in just hours. It's both blessing and challenge, bringing relief from the killing cold, but also creating its own dangers as snow melts and refreezes. How soon? Your mother asks, already moving to adjust the fire, which won't need to burn as intensely if warmer air is on the way. By midday, your father estimates, the clouds are forming to the west. This sudden change in conditions demands an immediate response, not just in activities, but in the teepee itself. The shelter that has been configured for maximum heat retention must now be adjusted to prevent overheating and manage the increased moisture that comes with warmer air. Time to open the summer vents, your mother says to you and your older sister, and roll the covers. These aren't minor adjustments, they're fundamental reconfigurations of the teepee's environmental control systems. What has been a sealed, insulated survival pod for the deepest winter must transform into a more breathable, ventilated shelter for the temporary warm spell. Hold up. I need to explain something wild about teepees, an indigenous architect once told me during a university lecture. Most people think they're just simple cone tents, but they're actually sophisticated climate-responsive structures. In a single day, a teepee could be reconfigured multiple times to respond to changing conditions. No other traditional dwelling could adapt so quickly. Your aunt's family prepares to return to their own teepee now that the brutal cold is retreating. The emergency that brought them to share your shelter has passed, and the normal patterns of winter life can resume. There's a flurry of activity as they gather their few belongings and thank your family for the shared warmth. "We leave our heat with you," your uncle says formally as they depart, the traditional expression of gratitude for winter shelter. "We keep it in the circle," your father responds, completing the ritual exchange. This isn't empty ceremony, it acknowledges the literal truth that their bodies contributed essential warmth to the communal shelter, and that the principle of shared heat continues even as they return to their separate dwelling. The circle of mutual support remains unbroken. With your teepee now returned to just your immediate family, the work of reconfiguration begins in earnest. First, your father removes the small wooden pins that have been securing the bottom edge of the covering tightly to the ground. This will allow for what your people call summer venting, raising the bottom edge of the teepee covering to allow fresh air to circulate at ground level. "Not too much," he cautions as he works. "Chinook is warmer, but not summer, just enough to prevent moisture build-up." This precise adjustment, raising the covering perhaps 4 inches from the ground in specific sections, demonstrates again the teepee's remarkable adaptability. Unlike fixed structures that might become stuffy and damp with a sudden temperature increase, the teepee can literally be opened up within minutes to create ideal ventilation. Meanwhile, your mother and sister focus on the smoke flaps at the top of the structure. Using the long control poles that extend down into the teepee, they adjust the position of the flaps to accommodate the changing wind direction that comes with the chinook. "Feel how the draft has changed," your mother instructs, placing her hand in the rising air current inside the teepee. "We need to open more to the east now, close a bit to the west." This adjustment isn't just about smoke management, though that remains essential. It's about creating the perfect balance of air exchange that will maintain a comfortable interior environment despite rapidly changing external conditions. When I was studying traditional ecological knowledge systems, an environmental engineer once told me, I was blown away by the sophistication of teepee ventilation controls. With just those 2 adjustable flaps at the top, users could create negative pressure zones, manage cross breezes, and control interior temperature with remarkable precision. We use powered HVAC systems to achieve what they did with 2 pieces of hide and some wooden poles. Your little sister Nima watches all this activity with fascination. At 4, she's still learning the complex art of teepee management, but these moments of adaptation are powerful teaching opportunities. "Why are we opening the bottom?" she asks, following your father as he works around the perimeter. "Because the air is changing," he explains patiently. When warm air comes, it brings moisture. If we stay closed up tight, that moisture collects inside and makes everything damp. Damp is dangerous in winter. It steals heat from our bodies and our robes. Even this simple explanation contains sophisticated environmental knowledge. The relationship between temperature, humidity, condensation, and heat transfer is being taught through practical application rather than abstract theory. By mid-morning, the teepee has been significantly reconfigured. The bottom edge now has strategic openings that allow for controlled airflow. The smoke flaps have been adjusted to account for the new wind direction. The inner liner, that crucial second layer of hide or fabric, has been repositioned slightly to maintain its effectiveness while allowing for increased ventilation. Now we wait, your mother says, satisfied with the preparations. The chinook will test our adjustments. And it does. By midday, just as your father predicted, the warm wind arrives in earnest. The temperature outside rises dramatically, perhaps 40 or 50 degrees in just hours. What had been 30 below zero yesterday might reach 20 above by afternoon. Snow begins to melt from the teepee covering. The sound of dripping becomes a constant background accompaniment. Inside, the effects would be immediately problematic without the adjustments you've made. The rapid temperature increase would create condensation on every surface. Melting snow and ice would drip through any available opening. The fire necessary for survival yesterday would become uncomfortably hot today. But the reconfigured teepee handles these changes with remarkable efficiency. The adjusted smoke flaps draw excess heat upward and out. The opened bottom edge allows fresh air to circulate, preventing dampness and mustiness. The repositioned liner catches any drips from melting ice on the poles or covering, directing the moisture away from people and possessions. Perfect, your father pronounces after checking the interior conditions. Dry floors, good air, no smoke backup. This isn't just casual praise. In winter, maintaining the right interior environment isn't a matter of comfort. It's essential for survival. Damp clothing or bedding can't provide proper insulation. Moisture-laden air pulls heat from the body faster than dry air. Smoke that doesn't vent properly can cause respiratory problems or, in extreme cases, carbon monoxide poisoning. Many white settlers died in winter not from cold directly, but from the secondary effects of poor shelter design, a historical climatologist once explained to me. They'd build cabins that couldn't adapt to changing conditions. During cold snaps, they'd freeze. During warm spells, they'd deal with dripping ceilings and dampness that led to illness. The teepee's adaptability was actually far superior for the climate extremes of the plains. With the teepee properly adjusted for the chinook conditions, the family's activities change as well. The brutal cold had kept everyone inside for days, conserving energy and warmth. Now, with the temporary warming, essential outdoor tasks can be accomplished. Your father and older sister head out to check traps and possibly do some hunting. Your mother takes advantage of the warmer air to bring some frozen meat out of storage and begin processing it, a task that would be painfully difficult in the extreme cold. Even Nima gets to spend some time outside, burning off the physical energy that's been contained during the cold snap. You're assigned to teepee maintenance, monitoring the structure throughout the day and making small adjustments as conditions continue to evolve. It's an important responsibility, one that recognizes your growing knowledge of shelter management. Watch for dripping inside, your mother instructs before turning to her meat preparation, and check the ground at the edge. Water shouldn't be pooling. These seemingly simple instructions actually require sophisticated observation and analysis. You'll need to monitor multiple systems simultaneously: the effectiveness of the ventilation, the management of melting snow and ice, the temperature balance, the structural stability in changing wind conditions. As the day progresses, you make several minor adjustments. When melting snow begins to drip too heavily on one section of the covering, you use a long stick to carefully clear it away. When the wind shifts slightly in afternoon, you adjust one smoke flap to maintain optimal draft. When sunshine directly hits one side of the teepee, creating localized heating, you open that section slightly more to prevent overheating. Every teepee is alive, your grandfather used to say. It breathes, it moves, it changes. Our job is to listen to what it needs. This perspective, seeing the shelter not as a static object but as a dynamic system requiring constant attention and adjustment, is fundamental to plains winter survival. The teepee isn't something that simply exists around you. It's something you actively manage and maintain in an ongoing relationship. By late afternoon, clouds begin building on the horizon again, and the wind takes on a different quality. Still warm, but with an unstable, gusty character that experienced plains dwellers recognize immediately. "Storm coming," your father announces when he returns from checking traps. Not cold again yet, but wet. Snow tonight, probably turning to ice. This new forecast requires yet another reconfiguration of the teepee. What has been opened up for the warm chinook wind must now be adjusted for precipitation and changing wind patterns. "Close up the bottom again," your mother directs, already moving to secure her meat processing work. But not completely. We still need the ventilation until the cold returns. This partial closing, sealing most but not all of the bottom edge, is yet another demonstration of the teepee's remarkable adaptability. It isn't simply open or closed, but infinitely adjustable to meet specific environmental conditions. Your father focuses on the smoke flaps, positioning them to prevent rain or snow from entering while still maintaining proper draft for the fire. It's a precise art requiring knowledge of how wind interacts with the teepee's conical shape and how precipitation behaves under different conditions. "The old ones say chinook brings false promises," he comments as he works. "Warm today, ice tomorrow. We must be ready for both." This constant readiness, this perpetual adaptation to changing conditions, defines winter life in a teepee. Unlike modern homes with their stable, controlled environments, the teepee exists in dynamic relationship with the world around it, requiring its inhabitants to remain aware and responsive at all times. I spent a winter living in a traditional teepee as part of my anthropological fieldwork, a professor once told me. The most profound lesson wasn't about the structure itself, but about the mindset it required. You couldn't just set it up and forget it. You were constantly adjusting, adapting, responding to changing conditions. It created a level of environmental awareness I'd never experienced before. By evening, the teepee has been reconfigured once again, still partially ventilated for the lingering warmth but secured against the coming precipitation. The fire burns at moderate strength, providing light and cooking heat without overheating the interior. Outside, the first wet snowflakes begin to fall as darkness sets in, large, heavy flakes that speak of the moisture-laden air the chinook has brought. They land on the teepee covering with soft patting sounds, distinct from the drier, lighter snow of the deep cold. Inside, your family gathers for the evening meal. Fresh rabbit from your father's traps, a welcome change from the preserved winter staples. The mood is lighter than it has been in days. The brutal survival pressure of the extreme cold temporarily lifted. Will we need to change the teepee again tonight, you ask, already anticipating the next adaptation? Your mother nods. When the temperature drops after midnight, we'll close everything up tight again. The wet will turn to ice, and we'll need all our heat. This isn't a burden or an inconvenience. It's simply the rhythm of winter life in a structure designed to be constantly adjusted and adapted. The teepee isn't a fixed solution, but a framework for ongoing environmental management. As night deepens and the wet snow continues to fall, accumulating on the teepee, covering and sliding down its sloped sides, your father makes one final check of the structure before the family prepares for sleep. "It's holding perfectly," he pronounces with satisfaction. "No leaks, good draft, stable in the wind." This isn't luck or coincidence. It's the result of generations of refined knowledge, passed down and continually improved. The teepee's design, materials, and management techniques represent the accumulated wisdom of countless winters, each small adjustment and innovation contributing to a shelter of remarkable effectiveness. As you settle into your sleeping robes for the night, the sound of wet snow hitting the covering creates a soothing backdrop. The teepee feels different tonight, not the tightly sealed survival pod of the extreme cold, but a more breathing living space adapted to the temporary warming. Yet you know this is just another phase in the continuous adaptation. By morning, when the chinook retreats and winter reasserts its grip, the teepee will change again, closing up, sealing in warmth, transforming back into the insulated shelter needed for deep cold. This constant flux, this perpetual responsiveness to changing conditions is perhaps the teepee's greatest strength. Not a single solution, but an adaptable framework. Not a static structure, but a dynamic system. Not simply a shelter, but a relationship between people and environment, mediated through ingenious design and accumulated knowledge. As sleep approaches, your last thought is of appreciation for this remarkable dwelling that has protected your people through countless winters, not by standing rigid against the elements, but by dancing with them in an ancient, life-preserving partnership. A month passes, then another. Winter maintains its grip on the Great Plains, but subtle changes begin to appear. The days grow incrementally longer, the sun climbs a bit higher in the southern sky. The killing cold still comes with each night, but its hold feels somehow less certain, less permanent than it did in the depths of January. You notice these shifts in your daily routine. The morning fire doesn't need to be built quite as high. The teepee covering doesn't crack with quite the same brittle sound when the wind hits it. The snow squeaks differently underfoot, still frozen, but with a hint of moisture that wasn't present weeks ago. "The light is changing," your mother observes one morning, looking up through the smoke hole as she prepares breakfast. "Spring is thinking about us." It's not here yet, not even close. On the northern plains, winter can reassert its deadly force well into what other regions might consider spring, but the first whispers of the coming change are unmistakable to those who've learned to read the subtle signs. Today, your father has declared it warm enough, perhaps only 10 below zero instead of 30 or 40, for a special expedition. You and your older sister will accompany him to check a more distant trap line that hasn't been visited since before the worst cold set in. "We need to move more," he explains as you prepare, bundling up in multiple layers of buffalo hide clothing. "We've been still too long. Our bodies need to remember how to travel." This gradual reintroduction to more distant movement is another aspect of winter survival, not rushing into extended activity after the long period of energy conservation during the deepest cold. The body needs time to readapt, to rebuild strength and stamina. Your little sister Nima is disappointed at being left behind, but at 4 winters old, she's still too small for this journey. The risk of rapid heat loss from her smaller body remains too great. Next winter, your mother promises her, when you're bigger and your fire burns stronger. This isn't just comforting words for a child, it's a practical assessment of thermal biology. Smaller bodies with less mass lose heat more quickly and have fewer reserves to generate replacement warmth. The margin between safety and danger remains narrower for the youngest and oldest members of the tribe. Outside, the day is brilliantly clear, the sky a shade of blue that seems almost impossible in its intensity. Your breath still freezes instantly, forming a cloud of ice crystals that briefly hang in the air before being carried away by the light wind. The 3 of you set off across the snow-covered plain, following a route marked by subtle signs that only experienced eyes would notice. A bent branch here, an arrangement of stones there. The snow crunches beneath your moccasins, each step breaking through a thin crust of ice formed on the surface. Remember how the teepee kept us alive through the worst of it, your father says as you walk, but also remember it wasn't just the teepee, it was everything together, the structure, the fire, the buffalo robes, the food, the family warmth, all of it working as one. This holistic understanding that survival comes not from a single technique or tool, but from an integrated system of knowledge and practice, is perhaps the most important lesson of winter life on the plains. I once asked a survival instructor what the most essential piece of equipment was for winter survival. A park ranger told me. I expected him to say fire starter or knife or something like that. Instead, he said knowledge. The plains tribes embodied that principle. Their gear was relatively simple, hide, wood, fire, but their knowledge of how to use those materials was incredibly sophisticated. After an hour of steady walking, you reach the distant trapline, 3 simple snares set in locations where rabbit tracks converge near a stand of stunted trees. 2 are empty, but the 3rd holds a good-sized jackrabbit, its fur now fully white in winter coloration. Your father quickly retrieves and resets the trap, respectfully thanking the animal for its sacrifice. The rabbit will provide not just meat, but sinew for thread, bones for tools, and fur for lining mittens or moccasins. Nothing will be wasted. The return journey feels longer, as it always does in winter. The initial energy has been expended, and now the body must work harder to maintain warmth while moving through the cold. This is when hypothermia can sneak in, when fatigue makes you less aware of your body signals. "Tell me about being cold," your father says to you as you walk. Not idle conversation, but a teaching moment disguised as casual talk. "When your hands and feet sting, it's normal cold," you recite, remembering the lessons taught since earliest childhood. When they stop hurting and just feel heavy, it's dangerous cold. When you feel suddenly warm after being very cold, it's deadly cold. He nods, satisfied. "And what do you do for each?" "For normal cold, keep moving and stay covered. For dangerous cold, get to shelter and warm the cold parts slowly. For deadly cold." "Yes?" he prompts when you hesitate. "For deadly cold, you need fire, skin-to-skin warmth, and to stay awake," you finish. "And to understand you might lose fingers or toes to save your life." These aren't pleasant realities, but acknowledging them directly is essential for survival. The plains tribes didn't romanticize winter or pretend its dangers could be completely eliminated. They respected it as a powerful force and prepared accordingly. As the teepee comes back into view, a dark cone against the white landscape, thin smoke rising from its top, you feel the familiar sense of relief that comes with returning to shelter. No matter how well prepared you are, winter travel always carries risk. The teepee represents safety, warmth, community. "Look how it waits for us," your sister says, pointing to the smoke that rises straight up today, indicating calm air. "It's breathing," you reply, using the traditional description. The teepee isn't just a structure to your people, it's a living entity, a protector, a partner in survival. The smoke is its breath, the hide covering its skin, the central fire its heart. Your mother and Nima greet your return with evident relief. Even routine journeys create concern in winter conditions, where a simple injury or unexpected weather change can quickly become life-threatening. "The rabbit will make good soup," your mother approves, already preparing to process this welcome addition to the winter stores. Inside the teepee, the contrast with the outdoor temperature is immediately noticeable. Not warm by modern standards, perhaps still only 40 degrees Fahrenheit, but that represents a 50-degree improvement over the outside air, enough to remove mittens, enough to work with bare hands, enough to survive. As the day progresses into evening, your father begins a task that has special significance as winter begins its slow retreat. He carefully inspects each of the lodge poles that form the teepee's structural frame, checking for any cracks, splits, or weaknesses that might have developed during the extreme cold. "The poles remember the winter," he explains as he works. "They tell us how hard it was by how much they've changed." This isn't just poetic language, it's practical engineering. The wooden poles expand and contract with temperature changes. They bear different loads as snow accumulates and then melts from the covering. They endure the constant stress of wind and the daily cycle of heating and cooling. Understanding how they've weathered these challenges helps predict their future reliability. "People think technology is modern," an indigenous engineer once told me, but the Plains tribes were doing sophisticated materials testing and structural engineering centuries ago. They just used different language to describe it. After the evening meal, as darkness settles over the plains and the stars emerge in the crystalline sky, the family gathers close to the central fire for what has become a winter tradition, the remembering. "Who will begin tonight?" your father asks, looking around the circle of firelit faces. "I will," your older sister volunteers. "I remember the night of the great wind when the teepee spoke with 100 voices but still stood strong." She's referencing a particularly violent storm from early winter when hurricane-force winds tested the teepee's structural design to its limits. The hide covering vibrated with such intensity that it created an eerie, multi-toned humming that did indeed sound like many voices singing together. "I remember," everyone responds in unison. "I remember when the ground tried to steal our warmth, but we laid the new mats and kept it away," you offer next, citing the day when you helped replace the insulating floor coverings. "I remember," comes the group response. Even little Nima participates. "I remember when lots of people slept here and we were like a pile of puppies," she says, giggling at her own contribution. "I remember," everyone confirms, smiling at the child's perspective on the emergency shelter arrangement. This isn't just nostalgic reminiscing. The remembering is a practical oral record of the winter's challenges and solutions, a way of cementing crucial survival knowledge through shared recollection. Without written language, the Plains tribes relied on these communal memory practices to preserve and transmit life-saving information. "The most sophisticated survival manual ever created wasn't written," a cultural anthropologist once explained to me. "It existed in the shared memory of indigenous communities, constantly updated, refined, and transmitted through practices like communal storytelling." Your mother's turn comes last, as is traditional. As the keeper of the teepee, her remembrance usually focuses on the shelter itself. I remember how the teepee has been our mother since the first snow, she says, her voice taking on the formal cadence of traditional speech, how it has held us in its circle, kept us from the killing cold, sheltered our fire, protected our breath, how it has moved when it needed to be strong, stayed firm when it needed to be still, how it has been alive with us through the moons of ice. I remember, everyone affirms one final time. This anthropomorphizing of the teepee, treating it as a living entity with agency and intention, isn't just cultural flourish, it's a powerful conceptual framework that helps maintain the constant awareness and respect needed to properly manage this life-critical shelter. After the remembering concludes, the family prepares for sleep. The fire is banked for the night. Sleeping robes are arranged in their familiar pattern. The smoke flaps are adjusted one final time to create the optimal draft for the night's wind conditions. These routines, repeated night after night throughout the winter, have become something beyond mere habit. They're a form of physical meditation, a bodily knowledge so deeply ingrained that it requires no conscious thought. Every movement is efficient, purposeful, refined by countless repetitions and generations of accumulated wisdom. Indigenous winter survival wasn't just about knowing facts, a Lakota cultural preservationist once told me. It was about embodied knowledge, information held not just in the mind, but in the muscles, bones, and reflexes. The body knew what to do even when the mind was tired. As you settle into your sleeping robes, the teepee takes on its nighttime aspect, a secure haven of relative warmth in a landscape of frozen hostility. The fire's glow illuminates the hide walls from within, creating a gentle amber light that gradually dims as the flames subside to coals. Through the smoke hole above, the stars are visible, brilliant points of white fire in the black winter sky. The Milky Way stretches across the opening, a river of light that your people call the Spirit Trail, where ancestors journey to the next world. Even the stars look different from inside the teepee, you think drowsily, like they're being held in a perfect circle, just for us. This framing of the infinite cosmos, viewing the universe through the deliberately created opening at the teepee's apex, is yet another aspect of how this structure shapes its inhabitants' experience. It's not just practical shelter, it's a lens for perceiving the world. As sleep approaches, your awareness expands to include the entirety of the teepee and its systems, the subtle draft that draws fresh air from the bottom edge and smoke up through the top, the radiant heat from the banked coals at the center, the insulating layers that separate your body from the frozen ground, the hide walls that transform howling wind into a gentle background murmur. The teepee breathes while we sleep, your grandmother used to say. It watches while we dream. It fights the cold while we rest. This isn't primitive superstition or simple metaphor. It's recognition of a sophisticated environmental system that continues functioning even when its human managers are unconscious. The teepee does indeed breathe through its ventilation design. It does watch by maintaining structural integrity against changing winds. It does fight the cold through its insulating properties and heat management. In your modern bed, in your temperature-controlled room, it might be hard to fully appreciate what this meant. The difference between life and death contained in a structure of hide and poles. The constant dance of adjustment and adaptation required to survive where the air itself can kill in minutes. The accumulated knowledge of generations embedded in every aspect of the teepee's design and use. Winter on the plains was never easy. It tested everyone, every year. But the teepee, this deceptively simple cone of buffalo hide stretched over wooden poles, made survival possible, not alone, but as the centerpiece of an integrated system of knowledge, practice, and community. As the long winter slowly loosens its grip on the land, as days lengthen and temperatures gradually moderate, the teepee continues its protective role. Spring will eventually arrive with its own challenges: mud, flooding, unpredictable storms. The teepee will adapt to these as well, its covering perhaps rolled up at the bottom to allow maximum airflow, its interior reconfigured for different activities. But for now, as winter still claims the nights and early spring remains just a distant promise, the teepee stands as it has for months, a human-created microclimate of survivable conditions in a landscape of extremes. "We didn't just endure winter," an elder once said, we live through it. There's a difference. I.e., the teepee made that difference possible. Not just shelter, but home. Not just survival, but life. As you drift towards sleep, warm despite the frigid night outside, protected by knowledge encoded in every aspect of this ancient design, there's a final moment of gratitude for the buffalo that provided the covering, for the ancestors who refined the design over countless winters, for the family whose shared warmth supplements the fire, for the teepee itself standing guard against the night. The teepee wasn't just a tent, it was a survival machine, and as winter stars wheel slowly overhead, as the banked fire breathes red in the darkness, as the hide walls stand firm against the night wind, it continues its ancient work of keeping human life possible in one of Earth's most challenging environments. Perhaps, as you rest in your modern bed, far removed from the killing cold of a plains winter night, you might appreciate anew this remarkable achievement of indigenous engineering and knowledge. And as you drift toward your own dreams, carried on the story of survival and ingenuity across time, remember that sometimes the greatest technologies aren't the newest or the most complex, but the most perfectly adapted to their purpose. Sleep well. The teepee stands guard in memory, just as it did for countless winters on the Great Plains.